And we want to welcome Reverend Judith Elia, who is one of our favorite speakers. We love having you. She is an ordained Unity minister serving diverse congregations for over 30 years. And she is also a marriage and family therapist. She graduated from the Eco Village training program from Fintorm Foundation in Scotland and a permaculture design certificate in 2014. She grew up in a family of tree lovers, how cool, and learned to garden with God from cloistered nuns across the street from her childhood in Niagara Falls, New York. She has recently become fascinated with forest medicine and is gathering friends far and near to honor, protect, plant, and nurture our relationships with trees and the living earth. She lives in Santa Maria with her wild and wonderful golden lab, Lola. That sounds fantastic. Judy, it's so good to see you. I'm going to go ahead and stop sharing my screen. Give me just a moment. And we welcome you and thank you for speaking with us today.
I'm so happy always to speak with you. And now more than ever, people are saying to me, you really should have been a Unitarian Universalist minister, because I'm punching all of my congregation's buttons because my local paper and I have been close since I moved here. I don't know why that happened. It was hilarious. I may have shared this with you before that we have a Columbus logo. Like our town was named for Santa Maria, the Virgin Mary, mom, And in the 60s, they changed that. They didn't think it was a good image. So they changed it to the Santa Maria slave ship, you know. And so I couldn't stand it, right? When I moved here, my brother-in-law, former editor of many papers in Silicon Valley and throughout, alternative papers like the Metro and the LA Weekly and stuff like that, said, you have to write an editorial about this, right? And I did, and they printed it, and then they asked me to do another one, and they asked me to do another one, then the school board asked me to do one, and so I'm the official guest commentator on the war, you know, and it's been a trip, and so just about every week, one of my congregants tells me, "You really should be a Unitarian Universalist minister." So I actually looked into it. Maybe I should, but it is what it is. I love unity and I love Unitarianism and Universalism, and I love you because even more than my own congregation, I feel that I can be uncensored. So thank you for that. And today, I get to share with you about something very close to my heart, and that is wildness, wilderness. If you got my little blurb about today, I quoted John Muir saying, "In God's wildness lies the hope of the world." And I think we can even take God out of the equation. Just in wilderness lies the salvation of the world. Victoria Lours, as I told you, wrote this book, The Church of the Wild. And it's really a book where she shares her path from being an indoor church minister to answering the call to leave patriarchal indoor suppressive church that no longer spoke to her. It's like the joke I tell people sometimes, I don't want to go to church. And they say, you have to, you're the minister. And she felt that way too much. And so she left. And for a while, she didn't do anything. And her son became this amazing environmental activist. It's a great story. And then she started meeting with people outdoors and in the mountains and in the forests and in the parks and in the rivers and under a tree. And she started this movement called the Church of the Wild. Our co-founder of Unity, Myrtle Fillmore, was a nature mystic. And she used to say in one of the letters that she wrote to her sweetheart, Charles Fillmore, before they were married, that she always got a lot more out of nature than most sermons she ever heard. 14th century mystic Catherine of Siena said this: "All has been consecrated. The creatures of the forest know this. The earth does. The seas do. The clouds know, as does the heart full of love." Strange, a priest would rob us of this knowledge and then empower himself with the ability to make holy what already is. That's from the 14th century. Such a powerful voice Catherine of Siena was for the interconnectedness of all life. I think I'm preaching to the choir here because I think most of you probably spend time outdoors. How can you not in Florida? And sense that pulsing rhythm of nature. You know, we can count on the sun rising and setting each day and the seasons passing. And you have to really look in Florida because the signs of the seasons are very subtle. But the river flows to the sea, and the clouds nourish the land with water, and trees are planted, and they grow, and they flourish, and they decay. And they lose their leaves, and then they regenerate, and they sprout new ones. Instinctively, we know that everything knows how to live. A falling leaf, a waving branch, if we're looking with the eyes to see or listening to the birds with the ears to hear, can give us a message and nudge us in the direction of life. The entire universe functions according to intelligence that exists and operates not just within things, but between and among them. We're interbeings, inextricably linked to the living, breathing, Holy Mother Earth. Just one example I'll give you is that trees, we now know, especially what we call mother trees, the largest trees in a forest or even in a particular area that isn't a forest anymore, but the largest tree in that area is connected underground for miles and miles, not just to other trees, but to a lot of things. We're still learning that a tree, a very large tree, can send nutrients and send medicines to sick plants and send things as far as the eye can see in all directions that sustain life. So if you kill that tree, things will die that are connected to that tree miles away. And that's just one example. If certain flowers, or what we call weeds, don't exist anymore, the monarch butterflies diminish. In our area, there's a butterfly garden, and last year, for the first time ever, there were so few butterflies it made people cry. At a place where there were tens of thousands at one time, before that hundreds of thousands of butterflies passing through, last year there were less than 100. But people got to work and they started doing monarch butterfly greenways, which was brilliant. You know, we were all actually, for the last couple years, under lock and key. So it gave people something to do, plant pollinators, and plant them. If your backyard's here, we really need them right here. So they actually mapped, we can do these things now, we have Google Maps, right? We can map the way butterflies fly, So they did a butterfly greenway. And this year already, we've had thousands of monarch butterflies come back. Now, I'm sure there's other reasons, like that we all stopped driving, for a couple of years, and all our air's cleaned up and lots of things happened to our environment. So naturally regenerative it is. So before I get off on all those tangents, I want you to remember, some of you that were with me months ago when I did a talk on the peacemaker and the ancient history of the first peoples of this land called Turtle Island. How many of you remember that talk? Anybody? Okay, thank you. I got one. So I'm going to tell you, those of you that didn't hear the talk, that the peacekeeper, Chief Oren Lyons, if you want to hear about it, just Google Chief Oren Lyons, the peacekeeper, and it'll come up on YouTube. Lots of talks about the history of the Turtle Island / United States and this peacemaker who taught the Iroquois respect, equity, and unity. He came with this idea that different people could learn to trust each other and form an alliance based on friendship rather than killing each other and destroying each other. And it wasn't a concept readily accepted. He encourages us with our failing democracy to remember that it took thousands of years for the Iroquois to learn how to be a democratic nation. It didn't happen overnight. So it's really wonderful, to hear these teachings. And a book I'm going to talk about later that talks about these wisdom teachings calls it indigenuity. Isn't that a great word? Indigenuity. And that is the wisdom of the indigenous people. So the peacekeeper explained to the Iroquois that everything, the first law of democracy, the first law of this new way of being, we give it the word democracy, but I don't think he probably used that word. The first word of this law of being is respect and reverence for all life. And you have to begin with yourself. You have to respect yourself. Because if you don't respect yourself, if you don't know yourself, if you don't honor yourself, all your mistakes, all your shadow parts, all of you, good, bad, and ugly, then how can you respect anyone else or forgive them? You have to start with yourself. And then it extends out. My teacher, Virginia Satir, who was at Chernobyl teaching Russian people how to do her methods of family therapy during the nuclear accident and died of cancer, spent the rest of her life teaching this message: peace within, between, and among. If you don't have it within, you're not going to have it between. And if you don't have it between, it's going to be impossible to have it among. And it's the same concept, right? Respect everything that lives on this earth. Start with you and everybody around you and everything around you in your backyard. The wisdom of, there's actually a movement called This is an Ark. And the idea is that we can give a little piece of where we live to wildness. We can respect nature so much that we give a piece of our backyard and just let it be free. And it's called the Ark movement. I'll talk about that later as well. So we begin with respect and reverence for all life, and then we can understand equity, which means that we really want to share what we have. And in the Iroquois tradition, the hunters were taught to hang meat in the trees for anybody who came by and needed it, and also to feed the elders and the children first. So by practicing these simple daily ways of respecting others, they were able to build for thousands of years this harmony, this cooperative way of life, and also by observing and listening to and learning the ways of the living earth. You have to pay attention. You have to be in nature. You know, they developed the system of agriculture that we now call permaculture, but they developed it because they understood that, wow, these three sisters, the beans and the squash, and I don't even know what the third one is, but these three things grow together. They're companion plants and they help each other to be strong. And so, they had this concept that we're now just beginning to find, that there is harmony, there is ways of strengthening, there is ways of growing things that are natural. In a book called Regeneration by Paul Hawken, the subtitle is Ending the Climate Crisis in One Generation. I love this book, and as I told you, it has a chapter on indigenuity, the wisdom of the indigenous people. And one example he gives actually is the exact same thing that your chalice lighting said today. The Maori from New Zealand have a custom called let me say that again. Mana Kitanga. And they teach it to their children. It means showing kindness, generosity, and care for everyone and everything. And it includes looking out for strangers, protecting them, providing hospitality and support. And it teaches that we're all connected. All people, plants, animals, everything. And we're here to help one another. Indigenuity has come from living and listening and watching and learning from the intelligence of the living earth. And in the words of Namanti Nanquimo, a Warani woman, a mother, and a tribal chief of her remote, probably the most remote, Ecuadorian community living in the rainforest, she wrote a letter to the leaders of 9 nations, and it's in this book. I highly recommend that you read it, the whole thing. I'm just going to give you 2 paragraphs. And it has the same idea we've been expressing about how long it takes to learn to be in harmony. It took thousands of years, Namanti Nanquimo says, to get to know the Amazon rainforest, to understand her ways, her secrets, to learn how to survive and thrive with her. And for my people, the Warani, we've only known you for 70 years. We were contacted in the 1950s by American evangelical missionaries. But we're fast learners. And you're not as complex as the rainforest. She is not college educated. She's brilliant. The forest and her elders have been her teachers. In 2020, Time magazine named her one of the most influential people in the world. Namanti Nanquimo wrote in this letter to the 9 nations, to the Western leaders who are destroying the rainforest and killing her people, poisoning the water, and really negatively impacting their way of life. These are her words. When you say that the oil companies have marvelous new technologies that can sip the oil from beneath our land like hummingbirds sip nectar from a flower, we know that you are lying because we live downstream from the spills. When you say the Amazon is not burning, we do not need satellite images to prove you wrong. We're choking on the smoke of the fruit orchards that our ancestors planted centuries ago. When you say that you're urgently looking for climate solutions, yet continue to build a world economy based on extraction and pollution, we know you are lying because we're closest to the land and the first to hear her cries. Namanti Nkwimo is wise because she's been a student of nature all her life, living with the rainforest, allowing herself to be open to its wisdom and to the teachings of her ancestors who have been learning this wisdom for thousands of years. I've had the good fortune of studying with some native Indigenous teachers. Sun Bear, the late great native elder healer, Melodoma Some, the late great recently passed African shaman, and Sister Mary Jose Habde, Iroquois and a Franciscan nun. They all walked this way and taught us to listen to trees, to go out and sit in nature, and to wake up every day and give thanks for life on earth, and to honor in some way, whether it was spreading out cornmeal or doing a flower blessing or simply standing outside, like I watched these beautiful Tibetan people do on the top of a mountain in Dharamsala. Just stand out and greet the sun. Let nature be your teacher, and it will. The forest monk, Bhante Dharmawara, who I was with for the last 10 years of his healthy life, he lived to be 111, lived in the forest and taught us that nature is the first step on the spiritual path. Every time he became stressed in the world, he'd go back to the nature of his heritage of being a forest monk. And his last time he did a forest retreat, he was 103. Buddhism, he would say, has always straddled the line between civilization and wilderness. The Buddha himself gained awakening in a forest, gave his sermon in a forest the very first time, and passed away in a forest. The qualities of mind he needed in order to survive physically and mentally as he went unarmed into the wilds were key to his discoveries of the Dharma. They included resilience, resolve, alertness, self-honesty, and circumspection. Steadfast in the loneliness, courage, and ingenuity. In the face of external dangers, compassion and respect for the other inhabitants of the forest allowed him to wake up. Bhante enjoyed telling stories of unexpected encounters with animals. He liked to point out that the Buddha urged people to be kind to all forms of life, and he taught people to love and give comfort to animals. He shared with us that Ashoka the Great was Ashoka the Great, Indian Buddhist, built hospitals not just for people, but for animals. And he believed that animals could sense and smell the purity of a person. They could feel its vibration, and they would never harm someone. They were even known to help them if they did not have an angry, smelly scent. And Bhante would never take anyone into the forest for a retreat that was not a vegetarian. Before he became a monk himself, he really thought that a lot of things were tall tales that he had heard. He didn't really believe that monks slept with snakes and were friendly, to large mammals, even tigers. He just thought that was all made up. He was skeptical by nature. He was a judge in Phnom Penh, a Cambodian monk. Before he became a monk, he was a judge, actually worked for the king's court as a provincial judge in Phnom Penh. So he had that kind of mind. He didn't believe any of that stuff until he proved it himself. He said, "It's true. Snakes slept with us. Some were poisonous and some were very large pythons. We woke up very quietly. We didn't want to disturb them at all. They would come and wrap themselves around us at night. At first, I was terrified, but they never harmed me." He told us many stories of his first scary encounters with elephants and tigers and wild boar, and how he would make up rituals and to try to, he said, not that he really thought the ritual mattered, but to try to calm down the young monks that he was supposed to be leading. He'd throw a stone in this direction and say a mantra and throw a stone in this direction when there was a herd of elephants that they had to pass by. And he said that in all his encounters with elephants, tigers, wild boars, snakes, they were not affected at all. One thing I like to tease people about, and I'll close with this, is the theory of evolution really gives animals a bad rap. There's a poem, it's called The Monkey's Disgrace by Roberta Fields. Has any of you heard The Monkey's Disgrace? No? It's a great poem. 3 monkeys sat on a coconut tree, discussing things as they are said to be. Said one to the other, "Now listen, you two. There's a rumor around that can't be true, that a man descended from our noble race. The very idea is a great disgrace. No monkey has ever deserted his wife, starved her babies and ruined her life, and you've never known a mother monk to leave her babies and others to bunk, or pass it from one to the other till they scarcely know who is their mother. Here's another thing a monkey won't do. Go into the night and get in a stew, or use a gun or a club or a knife to take some other monkey's life. Yes, man descended, that ornery cuss, but brother, he didn't come from us." I actually have had many encounters with dolphins that have proved to me that human intelligence is not superior. And although I laugh at that poem, I kind of think it's true. With cutting-edge technology now, scientists believe that they're actually able to see what dolphins see. And they believe that dolphins, because of this kind of new technology that we have, that's printing things in multiple dimensions, that dolphins communicate holographically. That they actually have the ability to click into being holographic pictures that we now can reproduce. And so there's this great potential to actually communicate in a scientific way. For those of us who already know, we can communicate in a spiritual way with dolphins. And the field of forest medicine is a field of research that's coming into its own, starting in China and Japan and Finland and Italy. It's just new to the United States, but there's all kinds of evidence now that trees telegraph their energy to help people to heal. That if you touch a tree, it will send you energy. And if you don't, it won't. If you pray to a tree or simply ask for its healing, it will send you energy. They can measure it now. And if you don't, it won't. They're actually studying trees that they believe have certain kinds of energy to heal certain organ systems. So, in closing, let nature be our teacher. May we once again plant seeds of peace in nature and return to listen and play in the garden of life where all beings are kin.